Hello everybody. Evan Abrams here, back with another video challenge for you. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me here. Alejandro, Marcia, Umacorn, Robert, Oliver, hey Rick, Rick back again, and CJ holding it down in the chat. Hello everybody. So, video challenges. What are we being challenged to do this week? Well, we have been doing a little beginner crash course on compositing objects behind our subjects and dropping in really 3D things back there. We were doing kind of a retro homage to classic video games. I mean, really depends on when you start your line of history. But today we're going to be completing the look. So no 3D, no rotoscoping. This is layers that go on top of and make use of the work we've been doing previously. So if you've ever wanted to add CRT TV retro looks, that's what we're doing today. Maybe a bit of a history lesson. CRT, we're talking about cathode ray tubes. These are the wonderful, wonderful tubes that used to be required to make moving images be projected. It's different than other types of TV technologies. But hey, everything's flat screen now. So go to a museum if you want to see a cathode ray television. So what does that practically look like? Let's have a look and get into it. So here we go. We got our screen up, and what we've got is a bunch of scan lines. That's something that's happening. We're trying some chromatic aberration. We're trying to treat sort of our red, greens, and blues, those wavelengths, separately so that we can have independent control over each of those. And we're having a little bit of a buzz burp go through here. You can see going into these areas here. And that is what we're doing. This is also a great way to sort of create what I want to say like a cheap loop out of this stuff, or a kind of low effort loop, we'll say, in that we can just fuzz out the image towards the end, and wouldn't you know it, we're back at the beginning. So we're kind of like that kind of fake rewinding. It's not quite a VHS look, because VHS really requires us to put in those kind of static bits that are going through. But anyway, that's what we're going to be doing today. So stick around, play along. If you make something using these techniques, share it with me over on the Discord, bit.ly/prdiscord, so we can have a look. I'd love to see what you do and where you push these techniques, but how do we start? How do we begin this stuff? Well, I recommend just taking the work that we've done previously. So let's see, what do we got here? Here is our work previously, where we put a bunch of 3D objects in the scene and behind the person, and everything looks too clean, right? It really gives away the whole game, because everything is too crisp, too clean. We need to muddy this up. It's a really nice way to harmonize stuff. So I'm just going to take our entire comp, the thing that we've already done, and I'm going to trim this comp to the work area, so we're only dealing with 5 seconds of it. And I'm just going to drag that down into the new composition button, which is going to give us a fresh new composition that is the same size and frame rate as what we're working on. Now, what we can do is we can just start applying effects to this. And one effect I want to call your attention to, if you are thinking about, well, I want to do something different to each of the channels, right? Maybe that's where your mind is going. And we're going to be going with the channel blur. So that is, you can just search and you'll find channel blur right here. And Vincent, it is cold here in fabulous Ottawa. My hands are very cold. So I'm going to just apply this here to the layer. And channel blur, if you've never used the channel blur effect found in the fabulous blur and sharpen family of effects, channel blur allows you to blur each specific channel by a certain amount. So let me just zoom in here to a place where it's going to be really noticeable. And I think it's going to be pretty noticeable down here on the feet. So let's say we take the red channel and we make it blurry. What does that what does that mean? Well, you can start to see that we get red and teal, right? This kind of cast that happens on everything. All we're doing is blurring the redness of the image. And so if we come down here to the bottom of our, the composition window, I can say, hey, show me all of the reds. So of course, if I started to blur the reds, it would look like this. And then I would say, well, show me the greens, and the green channel is still nice and crispy. So when you look at the RGB values, since we're only blurring one of the three channels, the image remains mostly pretty crispy, but as you can see, the redness is starting to blur and bleed. Now, this would be what is happening if one of those three channels, which need to be independently controlled inside of the machine, inside of the the old-timey television, is somehow malfunctioning, right? Or that controller unit or something is happening, that these things are getting out of phase. So that's why if you bump these elements, right, you start to get this kind of bespoiled monitor look, because one of those three channels is not, it's not working out. So this is one way that we can have a little bit of independent control. And you can see we can do a little bit on the blue, a little bit on the green, a little bit on the red. You can play around with those. If you were to blur all of these evenly, right, we don't get any of that strange, what we call aberration, chromatic aberration. It just blurs the image normally, right? The other thing that's kind of fun is that with this effect, maybe you only blur it out in the horizontal axis, and you can get some interesting looks with that. However, channel blur is not 100% of the picture, right? And in fact, what I want to do is grab independent control of these things and maybe skew or warp the image in these different channels in independent ways. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call this layer here the red. I just want to make a layer that is only the redness of an image. So for that, I can grab the shift channels, put that out here, and I can say, take the red from the red, but let's just have no green and no blue. So now I've created a layer that's only the redness of this thing. And I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to make one that is the greenness. So same thing with that layer selected, you go into the shift channels. We're going to say no thanks to the red, and we're going to say take the green from the green. Look at that, we got all the greens. Same thing for blue. Let's go ahead and get the blues in here. So again, full off, take the blue from the blue. So now we've broken the information out into red, green, and blue. Now, if I wanted to composite these back over top of each other to make the correct image, I would come down here to their modes and set them to add. By adding the channels on top of each other, we get the result of the final complete correct image, right? So this is a little bit of working backwards to do what the technology would be doing anyway, right? So this is just something to think about. If we are mimicking a type of technology, well, it behooves us to think about how that technology might work and then how we might manipulate that. Now, why would it be interesting for us to warp these things apart from each other? Well, at this point, I could just scale one of, say, the green channel. And look what happens if I start to scale the green channel. We start to get this chromatic aberration as one layer is different from the others. One channel is getting out of whack with all of the other channels, right? And you're getting this really interesting cast going on. And in fact, let me just go ahead and scale a couple of them a little bit differently. So let's say this one is at 102, and I'll do this one at 105. And if we scrub through that, we're getting a real wacky type of monitor discalibration happening here. Robert, you're a trained television video repairman. You can help fix this. So you can see these things getting out of phase with each other, right? So something about the signal coming into this is not working out. Something is not being encoded or decoded correctly. Bad things be happening, right? So that's pretty nice, right? Pretty nice stuff. But if we scaled it, you can see how we're everything is getting wackadoo on this, right? So instead, I'm going to go ahead, right click on here, I'm going to go transform, reset. What I want to do is account for a bending of the glass, right? So if people aren't familiar, we've lived in the world of flat screens for so long. Flat screens, i.e. the entire panel is flat. But there was a time when all panels were curved. There was a curve to all of them and a bezel around the outside. For anyone who wants to know what the title and action safe are all about, again, consult your local library. But those are the areas that were kind of covered up by the actual bezels of the machine. So I want to warp each of these a little bit separately. And I'm going to do that by using optics compensation. So this is under the distort family. There are many ways to distort things, but the optics compensation. I'm going to drop this down onto one of these. Oh, Robert says, Robert, you got a... Oh man, there's a lot of juice going through televisions. I don't think people realize that. Okay, so we are going to apply what is called optics compensation, and I'm going to solo this layer here just so you can see what happens to the single layer, and I'm going to adjust what is called the field of view. Now let's take a little step back from the machine and see what this is doing. See, it's actually bending this thing as you would expect that kind of warpy glass to do. So that's one way that we can warp it. You can hit reverse, and we are going to, as the thing suggests, reverse the idea out. Warp, like this. So we're stretching it towards the edge. Now, depending on which way you want to go, it's totally up to you. Do what you like with this. Accuracy is not entirely the idea here. We want to be able to do something artistic and interesting, but notice how the pixels towards the outside of the screen are getting more distorted than the ones towards the middle. Now that means that the stuff towards the middle here is going to be nice and crispy clean, whereas everything towards the outside is getting more and more warpy. So if you have a much more kind of center aligned type of image, maybe this is a good idea. This also kind of accounts for different wavelengths not coming through glass at the same amount. So I'm going to apply a little optics compensation on another one of the channels. Let's see. Maybe we go. What do? Let's do 40 on one of them, and let's do 20 on the other, which gives us two channels that are warping away from each other. They're getting a little bit bent, and there you go. So we're getting a little bit of the way here, right? Things are working out. Now, something else that we want to sort of deploy over top of this thing are some scan lines. So if we wanted to put some scan lines on here, that's a real easy fix. We can simply go new, and we put out a solid, make it the comp size, and make sure that this is black like this. Okie doke. And then we are simply going to apply Venetian blinds to this. So if we come into our effects, Venetian blinds, grab the transition Venetian blinds, crank it sideways, go 50% on this. Looks pretty much like scan lines to me, but you'd really just need to make these much, much smaller like this and definitely feather them. Now, why are we feathering them if they are meant to be tight scan lines? Well, the reason that we're doing that is because the light blurs together. One of my, we'll say, pet peeves about we'll say, pixel art is that everything in pixel art is so crisp and clean, right? Well, old-time video games were indeed made of limited pixels, but because of the way the actual dots of the mechanism project the light, that light blends together. So all of that kind of dithered graphics became smooth gradients on these displays. They were not chunkified, these things. So anyway, that's just something to be aware of, that the light bleeds together and produces the final image rather than sort of having an incredibly pixelated image experience. So something to be aware of. We're learning a lot about technology these days in today's stream. But Venetian blinds, easy scan lines, right? Simple scan lines to deploy on top of things. But something I would recommend if you're going to do sort of a harsh scan line, you notice how it's made our image so much darker, right? Vincent, I'm sorry, old timey, yeah, our black and white televisions. I just turned 36, so that's still young. I'm still very youthful. Many years, and who knows what terrifying technologies I will confront through the rest of my life. But I'm going to put an adjustment layer down here, and I'm going to put a glow on top of this. So we're going to put a glow into here, and right away it's kind of blowing out a lot of the colors. So I'm going to bring the radius up a bit, and I'm going to bring the glow intensity down. But this is adding to that sort of idea that maybe the gamma is not working out particularly well, or there's too much brightness coming into the image. We can tweak all of this stuff up. Oh, man, the chromatic aberration is getting wacky towards the edge of the frame. But we've got a lot of options, right? We've got a lot of options when it comes to making things a little bit darker, making things a little bit brighter, right? So we're trying to work it back and forth with these ideas, right? Now, I'm going to go ahead and add, I think, that kind of jittery shakiness that you saw in the original example. That's a bit of a tough one to nail down. But again, let's make sure that we are labeling our layers. Call this one the glow. Let's call this one the scanlines. And I'm going to go ahead and make a new adjustment layer. And this adjustment layer is going to be responsible for the glitch shifting. So there are many ways we can accomplish this, right? So let's see here what we might do to glitchify this thing. Well, we might just go to the turbulent displace. So good old turby displace. This doesn't look particularly glitchy yet. You say, Evan, what are you doing? Well, I'm going to change from turbulent to horizontal displace. So it's only displacing horizontally. And you can see if we increase the warp, so we can do that. And we'll just bring the size way down. So if you really tighten this up, you can get a good buzz going through here. You see it like that, so you can get a good staticky buzz. But this might not be exactly what you're looking for, right? So if we say rack the evolution here, so we can make that happen. And if we keyframed on the amount, that might be something. But turbulent displace is too smooth for my liking, right? This is creating a fractal on here. It's okay, but we're also not getting the type of edge behavior that I want. Right now it's all pinned. You could say don't pin, but then you're going to get a bunch of holes. I don't want holes. I want this to wrap around. So instead of turbulent displace, I'm going to use a displacement map. Now, a displacement map requires, as it says, a map. We need to give it some instructions. So let's go ahead and create a new solid, and let's call this the map. The map. And what we're going to do is come in here, and we are going to add a fractal noise to the mix, and we are going to deploy a mosaic to this. So the mosaic is going to try to turn this into cubes, and we're going to say horizontal blocks 1, vertical blocks, say many. Let's give ourselves, say, 150 of those. And we're getting some horizontal bars happening, which is great. I'm going to ask it to make only sharp colors. You're probably thinking, Evan, that's pretty wacky. You've made static. You're crushing it. Evan, you're so good at making things look bad. I'm going to go ahead and take this thing and not look at it. But just remember, it's full of black and white and gray values, right? So keep that in our mind. So the glitch shifting, I'm going to ask it to use the map layer and use it after effects and masks have been applied. And I'm going to turn the vertical displacement down to 0. And as I crank up the horizontal displacement, you can see that now all of those gray, black, white blocks are translating into horizontal movement going on through here. Let's go ahead and say, how much of this do I want? Maybe something like that. But here's the key. We got the edge behavior. I click that on, and there we go. We've got the edge from one side wrapping around to the other. So now we are able to do stuff like that. And at the same time, I can animate this map. So if I wanted to, say, increase the number of vertical blocks or decrease the number of vertical blocks, right, you could play with these as it animates. You could play with the fractal noise as it goes. So this would give us like a smooth type of deal. Or if you come into the evolution options, we could change the random seed, which will give us a click, 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 bigger change because we're randomizing the whole thing. So with those ideas in mind, let's come into the map. Let's go into the fractal noise. I want it to be constantly changing. I want this to always be different. So I'm going to go into the random seed. I'm going to hold down option. I'm going to click on random seed, and that's going to prompt me way down here. Oh, it's so tiny down there, to type something in. So I can type in an expression, and really a simple expression I think everyone should know about is just typing in time. That'll return the time in seconds. Multiply, little asterisk for multiply, say 100, and then the static is going. So we've got a lot of static happening. The map is staticky, okay? So, oh no, I've lost our place. I've lost our place. Not this one. It's not that one. It's this one. So it's staticky. That's great. And so the thing I'm going to keyframe is the maximum horizontal displacement. I'm going to say horizontal displacement, let's bring it down to 5. Not all the way down to none, but in the future, we're going to really crank that out to be in the 300s, something like that. Let's put this towards the end, and we'll see what happens. So that is causing our glitching out. Buzz, buzz, buzz. And then the whole thing starts over, as if the thing is resolving, right? So let's just play that again. You see it like that. So all we're doing is we're increasing the amount of displacement, and then that is maxing out, and then the whole loop starts over. Not bad for a quick and easy type of loop. If we wanted to do some like hits, if we wanted to do some hits on here where this thing seems to be fuzzing out for us, we would set a keyframe, set another keyframe, moving ahead, setting a keyframe, 2 areas of stillness, and then do a little blowout in the middle. So let's play that through. B and N. Give this a little render for us. Just a wee bit of fuzz. Now, it's important if you're doing something like this to consider, I'm going to copy and paste these keyframes like that, just Command-C, Command-V, is to consider doing this type of thing because we're telegraphing the thing that's going to come later, right? We're going to fuzz the whole thing out, but we're sort of priming the audience to think about, oh, maybe something's going to happen. The tracking's not super good. And then the loop feels less jarring when that takes place. So these are some basic ideas. We've played around with separating the channels manually so that we can manipulate each one individually. We've talked about a way that we can do kind of an overall channel blur to things. We've got some scan lines, we've got some glowing, we got some glitching, I think all in. We've degraded the footage to our heart's content, and we've taken it from HD down to kind of unpleasant. But pleasantly unpleasant, I think was the idea. We are taking a break tomorrow, but we are coming back on Friday. And on Friday, we are going to be taking a lot of the things we've talked about this week sort of one level further. So we talked about rotoscoping, where we were isolating our subject. We talked about inserting 3D objects. So tomorrow we're going to talk, or not tomorrow, Friday, we're going to talk about improving the lighting situation on those 3D objects so that we can make them feel a little bit more real, even though these play pretty nicely when they're totally unreal. And then we are going to talk about some other ways that we can kind of push these effects, these compositing ideas, and unify the whole thing. It's going to be a fun time. We're going to have a whole hour together on Friday. But that pretty much does it for me here. Just remember, when you are putting this stuff together, if at any point you find the colors are getting washed out or blown out, or bad things are happening to them, you can always add a new adjustment layer. Put an easy, simple curves on here, and this will give you, a little bit of control to make things warm, brighter, darker, warmer, etc. Curves is our best friend for doing these kinds of spot treatments. Anyway, let's go back to my lovely face here. Thank you all so much for being with me. If you have any questions, you can always get at me on Twitter, Instagram, all the places at EC Abrams. But stick with us here on Adobe Live. We've got a rich, full day of activities still coming at you. Lots of Photoshop-related stuff going on. Let's have a look. I think we are coming up next. We're going to have some compositing in Photoshop. Then we got some holiday gift bags getting illustrated. So, like I say, a rich, full day of things coming at you. But thanks for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time. Stay creative, be kind to each other, and I'll see you all around the internet. Bye for now.